When the name of a former beauty queen and practicing lawyer is thrown in as one of those who are currently at the forefront of the crusades to prevent the dying art of reading in Nigeria, the conversation becomes a bit more interesting. At this point, we've been joined by Helen Prest-Ajayi, a lawyer and former winner of the Miss Nigeria beauty pageant. A literacy advocate, as she prefers to identify herself, Helen Prest-Ajayi found purpose in her passion for education and invested her own money and time in the basic education of underprivileged children in makeshift schools in various rural areas. Her hands-on experience teaching English to children who could barely speak or understand English made her realize that if Nigeria wants her children successfully educated, we have to tackle the basic illiteracy issue by providing a curriculum and a method of teaching that is fit for purpose. In pursuit of this goal, Helen has created several educational tools, including curricula, apps, and books. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Prest-Ajayi.
Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
I'm sure that many of our viewers will be wondering, listening to Tuntun's introduction, because she introduced you as an author, as a writer, as a teacher, and what the public out there knows, mostly in Nigeria, is, oh, she's a beauty queen, she's a lawyer. But how did you come about writing? And this month, you are launching a campaign under the auspices of Concerned Parents and Educators Initiative, Save Education in Nigeria. I'm sure we all agree that we need to save the education sector. But when you say we need to transform education, what exactly do you mean?
First of all, this initiative is by Concerned Parents and Educators. It's an initiative started by Yinka Ogunde. Yes, very well known. Yes. I'm a member of that network. It's a network that is committed to transforming education in Nigeria. It's a network of concerned parents, which I'm one, and educators. And their concern is to ensure, as parents, number one, that their children are taught in the proper way, morally, and that their children learn morals, good morals, and they're taught in a way that will make them fit for purpose for life. So this month, the CPE has launched a campaign for education to make the public aware of not just make the public aware, but get the public involved in giving their opinions about what they want changed in our education sector, and also solutions that they may have. It's a 4-week program in which every week we have an initiative. The first week, as you see there, was to advocate in churches and mosques. Second week was to do a video. So maybe I should tag the three of you to do a video and tag a video talking about education, talking about your thoughts on education, and tag 3 other people to also do a video. And hopefully that will go viral and get other people talking about it. The fourth week, we're having a dialogue program, which the dialogue program, that's the 26th of February, 2020, a dialogue program where people can come together, discuss what we've learned so far through this 1 month of campaign, after which everything will be put together and we will send our findings to commissioners of education and the Minister of Education. We want everybody to be involved because education involves everybody. We can't sit back and fold our arms and say only government should tackle this problem. We as parents are the first educators. So we have to be responsible. We also have to take the initiative ourselves from our homes and then be involved, because without education, we cannot have any progress in Nigeria. We can throw all the money at infrastructure, at anything else. But if the populace is not educated, we will not have capacity development. And if we have no capacity development, we can't do anything. When we build things, we can't maintain them because we don't have the people to do that. So we cannot move forward. Development is about people, not things. When your populace is literate and developed, you can go anywhere.
So I want to put that question to you. What are your concerns about education and what are your solutions?
Don't get me started. My concerns, first and foremost, is literacy. We are not paying enough attention. We have very lofty ideas. We're always talking about university and higher education. Education starts from primary school level and with literacy. If you are not literate, you cannot go through the educational system. Literacy unlocks learning. So we need to spend more time, be more committed to that early learning years. I have to admit, everything, I studied abroad. I mean, my early years were in England. And I have to say that most of what I'm running on now, I learned from primary school, the basics. The basics. That's health, the basics in health, how to look after yourself, what constitutes good health, balanced diet, how to relate with your colleagues, morals. These are the foundations of life. So prior to that, if you're not literate, if you don't know how to put words together, how to put letters together to form words, how to put words together to form sentences, the relation between these words in sentences, what words mean. You know, there are like 55 essential words you should know by the age of 7. Studies have been done on it. These are the areas we need to sit down and focus on and take seriously. We rush through the curriculum as if there's a merit in saying, I finished. If you finished, you don't know anything. What's the point? So literacy for me is key. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board on that. I have done a lot of studies on that. I've taught children who don't speak any English and brought them to a point where they can, because you have to take baby steps. We are a nation where English is not our primary language, for most of us. In fact, the majority of us. So we cannot send children to school and start teaching them as if they already know English. They don't. They'll be confused. They'll be afraid. That's why you have all this exam malpractice comes from early on when you've given up hope. It's too late for you. You know that there's no way you're going to understand this, and you know that certificate is everything in your life. Of course you will cheat and find a way to soldier through. You know, Nigerians were ingenious. We survive, we know how to survive. So this exam malpractice you're saying is an element of survival skills. But the issue should have been addressed right from the beginning in primary school. Teaching, making sure before they move on to the next stages of education that they understand the fundamentals, how to read and write.
I want to just ask you about that, or stress this point. Like you have China, for example.
Yes.
The Chinese speak Chinese.
Yes.
That's their mother tongue. So
Yes.
you've been speaking that at home to your 3, 5, 6, whatever.
Yeah.
Then you start school and you're taught in Chinese. But your point is that at home we speak Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, whatever language. And then you go to school and you're taught in English and you don't have a grasp of it.
Not exactly. First of all, China is a world power. Their population makes a difference in the world. We may even start having to speak Chinese very soon, because he who dominates the world...
It's a language of competition.
Yeah. It's competition.
Yeah.
We're not a world power. We need to have a language that we can be able to connect and thrive in the committee.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is that how they became a world power is probably because of their ability to grasp their lessons from an early age. There wasn't that confusion, that mental confusion. It's a seamless transition from your mother tongue at home to your mother tongue being taught at school. In Nigeria, our official language is English, but that's not our social language.
I still maintain my position in what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, and that really is the argument that many people give. But we don't have textbooks in our language.
I'm not suggesting that we should. I'm just suggesting that time should be spent making that transition a proper transition, that transition is skipped. So you're not actually taught as if you're a Spanish person or a Chinese person. It's assumed that you speak English already, what you don't.
But there are initiatives like that.
Sorry, yeah. So you should be taught English as a foreign language, really.
Definitely. That's what I mistook what you're saying.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It should be approached in a different way.
I thought you meant you were taught in your language.
No. Okay. It should be approached as a foreign language.
Definitely.
Because there's an assumption that's been made.
Exactly.
And those skills are not there.
You've said it all. You've said it all. Completely what I would say. We have to teach English as a foreign language and not make the assumption that everybody speaks English fluently. We don't. Just like in churches. You go to churches, they have the pastor who speaks fluent English, then they have somebody else translating in vernacular, you know.
Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Ajayi, we'll need to take a short break now.
Okay.
When we return, the conversation will continue. It's still the morning show. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Ex-beauty queen and literacy advocate Helen Prest-Ajayi is still in the studio with us, looking into literacy as a whole and how this is basically the crux of the matter when it comes to education and one's foundation. And you have a great book coming out soon, and I will point it at the camera, and this is the Complete English Grammar Guide. And I'm going to go straight to a section that, of course, off the program we were all laughing about, and that is 55 words and phrases to avoid. And this section caught my eye because there are phrases on here that I even say, and I realize that these are things that we all kind of end up saying, and you put these corrections in. So why was it important for you to lay out English grammar like this? And why did you see this as a good concept for children to start to understand things that are right and wrong, such as these phrases?
And not just children, everybody.
Like
really.
me, for example.
We're all children anyway.
And we're all learning every day.
We should be learning.
There's no end to learning.
Exactly, there's no end to it. The reason I wrote this book is because we have to understand that there's a distinction between casual English, social media English, text messaging English,
and Queen's English.
and formal English.
Okay.
Formal English is really important because that's what we use in our workplace, writing our exams, to get certificates, to improve the quality of our lives. And that's what we communicate with our international colleagues, if you're in that kind of field where you have to always communicate. And also because English is now, because of globalization, is a global lingua franca, you know, and if you don't understand it properly, you'll run into trouble. Because the world, now the world is so small, you're not in your village anymore. And Nigeria is not just Nigeria, you communicate with so many people, so you have to be able to speak and understand what other people are saying, to translate it for yourself, to know what you need to do and how you need to move forward. And if you don't, you cannot just take your vernacular English and think it's fine. For instance, I'll give you an example, which is one of the examples in my book. There's this phrase, and actually this phrase only came into our lexicon maybe, let's say, 15 years ago. When I was growing up in Nigeria, nobody ever said it. And I feel that's because our literacy level has dropped so much. People are just struggling and grappling just to, you need to communicate. And if you don't have the wherewithal, you will find anything to be able to communicate and get your point across. So there's a popular one now that we hear everywhere. How was your night? I know, that's a translation.
Yes.
From vernacular. How was your night? Now, that is actually a very rude question. If you say it in an office environment anywhere in the world, you'd probably get a slap if you're a man asking a woman, how was your night? Because it presupposes that you have intimate relationships with the person, or you're aware that they had some intimate relationship that they're not supposed to have, and you're asking how, especially if...
How did it go?
Yes. How was your night? That's not what you'd say in a public environment. I don't even think, even if you're in the same house as somebody, say, really, how did you sleep? Not really, how was your night? How did you sleep?
How did you sleep?
Yeah, how did you sleep? And usually it comes with the preconception that maybe you were sick before, you had some illness, and maybe you had a rough, very disturbed sleep. So to say, how was your night? But that's a translation from vernacular to English.
Anyway, let's break down the subject of literacy a little bit.
Yes.
You say that's your biggest area of concern within the education sector in Nigeria. But, to play the devil's advocate, we seem to have improved a little. As at 2008, our literacy rate in Nigeria was about 51%. Now, the latest statistics were told that adult literacy rate is now as high as 62%. Now, statistics can be unreliable in Nigeria because a lot of people lie with data. But if that is the case, well, it looks like there is room for improvement, and there is a lot that we can do. If you look at the statistics that's also available, we're told that the high literacy states, at least the first 12, they are all in the south, from Edo to Lagos to Abia to Imo, which has, according to the statistics, the highest literacy rate. But what, in your opinion, is responsible for this problem? Because the more literate people we can have, the better for, the society, the economy, and everything. So what's the problem? Is it the disappearance of libraries? Is it the threat of social media and technology? Is it the failure of parenting? Is it that the schools no longer have good teachers? Or is it that, Nigerians just don't worry anymore? They just want to make money. Nobody wants to be literate if they can help it.
Well, I don't know about those statistics because for what I know, the UN statistics from 2015-16 gauged our illiteracy rate at going to 70%. We have over 50% of Nigerians illiterate, completely. When you look at the population of Nigeria, that's like the whole of UK, Sweden, and Nordic countries. The whole population in all those areas totally illiterate. That's a huge problem. And it's really more than that. It's probably 70%. We see it around us every day. You don't even need to actually look at those. We are feeling it now strategically in our own environments all the time. So putting that aside, what is the problem? All of the above that you mentioned, but in reality, what is causing our illiteracy is not enough attention paid to early learning years. That is when it's in primary school that you learn the fundamentals of how to speak, read, and write English. Our curricula is brushing over that completely. We are so focused on rushing through whatever we have been set to do, that we don't really care that the children have not acquired those basics. And why have they not acquired those basics? They haven't acquired those basics because English is not our primary language. It needs to be taken more slowly so that we can, the children who are coming home never haven't spoken English before. Only children in cities, really. Children in rural areas will not even have anybody to speak English with. So maybe even Pidgin, they would not even know. So they're coming to primary school, and they're expected all of a sudden to get going. They're off and away, the teacher's speaking to them in English, and they have to interpret what the teacher's speaking to understand what they've been taught. It's an uphill task. I believe we need to take that period slowly, more systematically, to ensure that we capture that first stage fundamental access to education. Literacy is your access to education. It's an access. It's not education, it's access. Because if you do not unlock that key, you cannot move forward. That's why we're seeing exam malpractices. That's why we're seeing graduates coming out, they can't write letters. They can't make a sentence. They can't even understand what they're being asked to do. Somewhere along the line, the ball has been dropped, and they've just been pushed forward from stage to stage. And exam malpractices from every stage. And what is worse is that when you have... We look at it and we just think it's exam malpractice, but these are the same people coming out as doctors, as lawyers, as engineers. That's why when you call somebody to come and fix the most mundane thing, it's never correct. There's a rule that that's why when things are broken, we throw them away. Because there's no point in trying to repair. It is never correct. And that is because they didn't understand.
All the guys that should be artisans. They are all busy riding Okada and Keke Napep.
Yes.
So you really can't build anything on a weak foundation.
You cannot.
And let's talk about literacy in the sense, because you're really highlighting, my definition of literacy before this conversation started was the ability to read that this says this day, then you're literate. But no, it's a lot more than that. So let's talk about the way we're taught. Like we said, teachers just gallop ahead full steam on an assumption that they're basic skills. But what about this practice of learning by rote? That really is quite unhelpful. That's how we learn here, we cram.
That is because we don't really understand what we are learning, which is why you have to go back to the basics. I say this because I've seen it in action. I used to teach children who don't speak English at all. And I've also taught children in private schools whom you think would have a better foundation. And I found that a lot of them, they can tell you the alphabet if they're singing it. If they say stop and start from another section, they can't. You know, I actually wrote a program for training children how to speak and write English. So part of the program is we get letters, physical letters, and put them in a tray, because you need to know what the children know. So you put them in a tray, excuse me, and you ask the child, pick out D. They can't.
Well, sorry to interrupt you. We'll soon be rounding up.
Yes.
But these books, I see you also have 2 books for children, African Proverbs for and About Children by Helen Ajayi. They're my favorite tortoise tales, Helen Prest-Ajayi. And then this one. Are these books available already in the bookstores?
The other books have been out forever. I wrote those books when my children were small, simply because they asked me. They complained one day, Mama, how come all Nigerian books are always dull, drab-looking, with ugly children?
This Proverbs one is great. I was like, I had a good laugh going through. Proverbs. Honestly, and it's your explanations as well of the Proverbs. Honestly, it's great.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great to be here.